If you want to support the Missing Witches Project, join the coven. Find out how at missingwitches.com, or buy our books, New Moon Magic and Missing Witches. And check out our deck of oracles, the Missing Witches deck of oracles.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Missing Witches podcast. I just knocked my keyboard over. This is very typical of me. I'm Amy, and I am a disaster. It's fine. It's fine. Nobody comes into this world perfect. None of us will leave perfect, and I think that that's a good start for this conversation.
How boring it would be otherwise.
Right. That's the voice of Ysha. I will introduce you very quickly. Ysha is a self-described fat, queer, non-binary, artistic immigrant witch of color, of Egyptian heritage, raised in Italy and now living in South Wales in the UK, who makes content at the intersection of witchcraft and activism on YouTube as Activist Witch. You might know Ysha as Activist Witch on Instagram and on YouTube. They are the intersectionality educator at Glitter Simru, the grassroots organization for queer people of color in Wales, and the chair of Glitter Sibling. I have to pause on Glitter Sibling and say it one more time. Glitter Sibling. The glitter branch dedicated to marginalized genders. And our good friend Imogen, a Scottish tarot reader, is going to jump into this conversation a little later once we dive into some of our other subjects. So hi, Imogen. Thanks for being here. And hi, Ysha. How are you?
Hello. Thank you so much for having us. It's a bit of a dream come true. We've been fangirling about this for a while. There's no point in lying about that. Very well, very well. Thank you so much. Just thank you so much for having us, because it's a bit of a dream. Like, I think one of the things that Imogen and I bonded over was that I gifted them the New Moon Magic book. So
That's New Moon Magic by Risa Dickens and Amy Torek.
Indeed. So it's just, this feels coming a bit full circle.
And let me expand the question. Who are you today? We are firm believers that you're under no obligation to be who you were 5 minutes ago. So I just want to know, in addition to how are you, who are you?
I'm still the fat, queer, non-binary, autistic witch of color. I am a bit out of touch from my body today, which is something that I will dedicate the weekend to. But other than that, I am a very grateful 12-year-old in my head, because I come from a stupidly small village in Italy, and think of all the steps that I've taken that for some bizarre and amazing reason brought me here. I'm stupidly grateful about. So I'm a very grateful child at the moment.
I love that. I'm going to adopt Grateful Child as one of my personalities for sure. We talked about this a bit beforehand, but there's a polar vortex in the UK, and here in the woods of Quebec, it is freezing rain. It's dark at like 4 o'clock. So I was hoping you could start us off with a little invocation to Hestia and help us bring the goddess of the hearth and warm us for this conversation.
So yeah, for those who wouldn't know, Hestia, Vesta in her Roman form, is my patron deity, and she saved my life and my ass more times than I can count. And indeed, I see the point. Coziness, warmth, the entire concept of autumn and being safe in a place, to me, goes to her. So, weird thing, we're gonna try this in English because I was saying to Amy before, my invocations to Vesta usually in the morning. have come naturally in Italian, despite the fact that I haven't been living in Italy like in 20 years. It's the only thing that I still speak Italian about. Let's try. Let's try if I can manage in English. Come on. Mother Vesta, at this time of tumultuous coldness in the world, in physical and unfortunately at times in spiritual ways, we beseech your presence and your warmth to remind us that there is always a safe place for us when we look inwards and when we look to you. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel warmer already. How did Hestia come to be your patron deity?
Uh, Completely accidentally, I've made like an hour-long video about it because I won't bore you with that here. But in short, I was having my second brush with homelessness in my life, and it was at a very bad time in general on a social level here in the UK. A lot of people were getting homeless because of law that were introduced, and everybody was in the same boat. So it was hard for everyone to find a place to rent, which as a millennial I don't expect to ever buy. So rent is where I was at. And suddenly I just started to practice like in the 5 months before, and I looked up a spell about securing a property. And for some reason, something clicked in my head and went, oh, wasn't Vesta the Roman goddess of, the house and the heart? Ah, wouldn't hurt, ask for her help. And that spell accidentally became a bargain, a deal, saying, you get me a place that is safe and comfortable. And for every day that I'm in the house that is safe and comfortable, I'll light you a candle. And she found me a better one than the one that I asked her for on so many levels. And so that's where it started.
So you are activist witch. That's your handle on YouTube and on Instagram. And obviously we're going to get deep into the activist part, but I want to start with the witch piece. Like what drew you into the craft? How did you become a witch?
So I was born and raised in Italy. And Italy, I was in a village as well. Like I wasn't in a main town. My village is a farmer's village and it's 600 people, where I was the only person of color, which I do not recommend someone to experience. But my generations of grandparents just worked the fields. I was the first person that actually didn't do that in youth, but I was still raised on the farm. And we have a huge um, tradition of tarot. I realized in hindsight because that's kind of sort of where it comes from. Like, I mean, the Visconti Sforza very likely comes from playing cards that were from the Middle East. So let's not claim that Italians invented that. It's another thing that Orientalism is affecting things for. Sorry, the activist is coming through. But yeah, back to the witchy part. It's something that was around and I didn't realize was what other people call witchcraft. It's not something that I necessarily practice or thought about practicing as I was living in Italy, but I've been around cartomanters forever. And the propelling thing that happened was a couple of years ago, my pet cat Whiskas died very suddenly. And I don't have a good, who has a good relationship with death? I have a particularly bad relationship with death, though. And my spouse, who is a very practically minded person, like they used to study physics. So every time that there was a discussion about spiritual, I always had the feeling that they were like, if it helps you, sweetheart. Like, not necessarily in a patronizing way, but, you know. And bizarrely, when that loss in the family, because that's what it was, happened, they suggested, why don't we do a ritual to help Whiska pass over? And the ritual was basically a spell asking Persephone for safe passage. And that's what got us started. And I think I it's very bizarre. To this day, I can't quite say or know what came to them. They made it sound like the most natural thing in the world, and they practice with me now. We're both witches, but it was a thing that I didn't expect from them, and it took me a moment to, because I'm very skeptically minded. I don't know if it's my autism, my need to find information. I don't know. So I still try to bring those two together, but be whatever it was, it brought me a lot of hope, and it managed to focus my attention on something proactive rather than just living with the grief that would just lead me to desperation. So if that was just desperation, this brought me some kind of hope. And whatever the other result is, the fact that it brought me hope, it did its job.
That's the thing, right? Like people are like, oh, well, it's a placebo or it's this or it's that. But the thing about placebos, like medical science will tell us that
It still
placebos
works.
work more than they should, like to a bizarre degree that they work more than they should. And so I don't know if I think that magic is a placebo. I think that it's more real than that. But even if it is, if it helps, if it gives you hope when you're feeling hopeless, then it's
Yeah.
working and it's real, right?
Yes, that's exactly that.
Yeah, yeah. And you have said, and you just spoke about how tarot is the most prominent part of your practice. In one of your YouTube videos, I had to laugh because you said, in your Italian village, there were two cartomancers, and you had to choose a cartomancer like you choose a football team, which, I mean,
Oh,
in
yeah.
Britain, is a very, very big deal. Like, you choose your football team, soccer, for those of us who are in North America. Um, my spouse is Scottish, so we say football around this house as well. Um, um, that you choose your cartomancer like you choose your football team.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Serious business it was.
and so how would people choose? I'm so curious
I
about this like town where
I'm
cartomancy
not
is
sure,
football.
to be honest with you, what the criteria was. I know that the one that my mother went to was known, and I knew her as Maria la Cieca, which was Maria the Blind Woman, which in hindsight still makes me think, were we trying to like fetishize disability? Because it doesn't, again, sorry, it's the activist that keeps coming on to these things, but in hindsight, I have to think about those things. Um, I just know that there was a choice clearly made because we should go into the anthropology of Italy, which is not necessary here. But
Oh,
Italy is a very young country.
we love a sidetrack. Please anthropologize us.
Italy is a very, despite the perception, is a very young country. It's been a country for 160 years. It wasn't Italy until 1861. It was all small city-states. So between the fall of Rome in the 400s and 1861, it was all city-states. It was in the Italian peninsula, but it was far from being one thing. And it's something that Italy still carries. I think it takes longer to move away from that mentality of I need to fear my neighbor because again, being small city states, you could disappear from a day to the other because they would come to the walls and the city would fall and it would become a dependency of something else. And that kind of mentality is still very, very strong in Italy. So the idea of having two cartomancers, you chose one, and you sort of also chose the people that came because they go with them, and it's questionable as an approach, but it's the approach that you are taught and therefore comes naturally to you until you start to look into it and you're like, but this doesn't fit. Why do I have to have this natural animosity towards someone? But it's unfortunately the kind of natural way that you are taught at the very least in my village, and unfortunately with the people that I'm still in contact with in Italy, they confirmed to me that unfortunately that's still a kind of mentality that is there. But there are good people, and not necessarily just because they run away like me, because I was lucky enough to run away. But it's a country with a lot of cultural issues that it's hard to go down to the bone of, because there's a lot of denial, because there's been denial after World War II. Italy had colonies, but nobody talks about it. Italy doesn't study. I didn't study that Italy had colonies just because losing World War II, they were given to Britain. Britain had to deal with their colonial past, Italy never. So it's that kind of thing. And unfortunately, that kind of sort of looking behind your shoulder uh, manifests in everything, even in the fact that you choose a tarot reader and therefore you are with some people and you have to look behind your shoulder from everybody else, even in a village that is 600 people. Like, we should all be a team here. But yeah, that's how it works, unfortunately.
Yeah, Sylvia Federici, I wish I had the quote right in front of me, but one of her
Hmm.
contentions is that the witch hunts fostered capitalism, because if you suspect your neighbor, then there's
Hmm.
that isolationism that comes with that. If you can't trust any of your neighbors to quote unquote not be witches, then we get this individualism that we see here in the
Yeah.
West, where it's, every man for
Oh,
himself.
yeah.
We've lost our sense of community. We've lost our sense of collaboration because we're always looking over our shoulder at the witch who's going to take
Mm-mm.
us down, right?
Yeah, Sylvia knew something when you were Caliban and the witch, didn't she?
Yeah, definitely. And where does the Egyptian part of your heritage factor in, or how, to your practice?
It's it's something that I'm still exploring, because despite uh, being half Egyptian, my father was Egyptian. I'd never even been physically to Egypt myself, and my parents separated when I was 1 year old, so I never actually had that influence really. So I don't. I had this perception. I've considered looking into Kemetism, because technically it's. I was like, oh, can I learn actually something from my heritage through that? And it's something that I'm still learning and debating. Something that has helped me a lot to get more of an understanding has been the collection Bringing Race to the Table, about the people of color in the pagan community, because I was genuinely thinking, especially at the beginning when I started to make content, I had other content creators come to me say, "Oh, you have the entitlement because you are genetically Egyptian. You have the entitlement to talk about that stuff, so that's what you should do. That should be your niche." And it didn't sit right with me, but I didn't quite know why until I read Bring Your Race to the Table, and I was like, "Oh, that's an amazing racist microaggression right there." And I was like, "I know that doesn't, but I can't quite say why." And that's why I was why. Because I don't have contacts and connection to that culture, if I were to look into it, it would be to actually get that connection. It's far from me the idea of being someone that could claim then educating others through that, because that, even being Egyptian myself, because I'm not immersed in the culture, it would reek to myself of cultural appropriation. And it's been an interesting journey to try and understand how I feel comfortable learning about it. Um, Something that actually was unexpectedly teaching was, we'll talk later about Witches for Palestine, but the people involved in Witches for Palestine of Kuchus to Gaza, who are the mutual aid group that I'm directly in contact with, they work with people in Cairo. They have been to Cairo and working together, like I saw all the, video messages and stuff, and when they were in Cairo themselves. And it was an experience, put it this way, that because that was the first time that I've actually seen normal people be and live in the place that I come from. That by chance I wasn't born there. I could have happened. And there's a lot of conflictual stuff for cultural issues, like um, not necessarily to have to go in details here, but Egypt was one of the countries that up until the 90s had a 95% presence of FGM, fetal genital mutilation still, which then brings thought to my head of what if I had been born there? I've never met my grandmother, but it brings these thoughts. So there's a conflictual feeling there, and I am trying genuinely the thing about my practice that has been more valuable in that is my ancestral practice. And thankfully, I do have one picture of my paternal grandparents, just one, but I have it. And it's there, and I dedicated a tarot deck with them. And I am trying to work through these to understand all sides of it, to then understand what's worth bringing in the future with me. But it's a work in progress.
I'm so glad that you brought up, culture as separate from heritage.
Oh yeah,
Because I think that there is like this idea that if you do like a 23andMe and it comes up, oh, I'm 5% this, that like you say, you have some entitlement to that. But
mm,
growing up in a culture or being immersed in a culture, creates who we are almost as much as that DNA.
oh
So
yeah,
I think if you're missing that piece, then that's something to really
yeah.
consider.
Like I think that the entitlement idea from other people came from the fact that, oh, if you have to take the flack of it, so the racism of being Arab, you might as well take the nice bits as well. I I I do understand uh, partially the point of view, and again, I do understand that probably that's what makes me think, oh, it's worth looking into it. But the line always comes between it's worth looking into it for me and my practice, and not as
Yes.
it was proposed to me, oh, you can be the Egyptian witch. Why are you not the Egyptian witch? Because
You
I've
can
never,
you can
no,
sell
it
you can
doesn't work
sell
like that.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. That was
Yeah.
exactly the way that it was said. I wasn't gonna say that,
Hmm.
yeah. And I was like, No, I'm not the Egyptian witch. I've never been the Egyptian person." So that's the what helped me even look into it and understand the difference. So I might look into it for me. I'm definitely not going to be the one that sells that to others through me. I don't
Yeah.
have absolutely the ability nor the entitlement, nor I will ever have that just because my surname is Arabic and I'm half Egyptian, because I've never been there. And those things need recognition.
I do have one more question before you brought up Witches for Palestine. Obviously, we're going to get right into that, but I have one more question first, and that's that to me,
Mhm.
something that, unites witches of all varying practices globally, um, is that feeling of being different. And so I'm wondering, like, you are an autistic witch, you're a queer witch, you're a non-binary witch. These are things that listeners, I'm doing big scare quotes with my fingers here, things that make you different. And so I'm wondering how those aspects of your identity or of your personality have influenced your craft in ways that you think other people might not connect to magic.
So, well, the first thing that comes to mind I know it seems like I'm giving a CV when I give the adjectives of descriptions of who I am, but that's, it took me time to understand that those are the way that if I describe myself, people then are going to have a vague idea of who they're dealing with. I think the queer side, both in terms of identity and of sexuality, because it applies to both for me being a non-binary person who's also demi-pansexual. It's a lot of what I heard about witchcraft was very gendered, was very the divine feminine and divine masculine, the maiden mother crone, the tarot itself, all the courts or the emperor and the empress. There's just this gender binary. That was the first thing that I was like, but I'm not gonna like this. So what am I gonna do about it? And thankfully, because again, in my current practice, I got around it like a couple of years ago. There was already like the amazing work of Charlie Clare Burgess and Radical Tarot. And immediately I got around, oh, okay, I understand. We have already deconstructed this. Amazing, because otherwise there would have been a lot of work for me to do that thankfully somebody else took over. Um, my being a person of color is, again, has been interesting in exploring how do we bring the the differences together, because the entire reason why I opened the channel uh, in 2023 was because I went to a pagan conference here in South Wales. South Wales is mainly white and Celtic of origin, so Caridwen, Rhiannon, all those things are part of the Celtic pantheon and the bardic tradition here. And my idea was, if you are on any slice of the wheel of privilege, which is not the center, so you're not a cis white hat able man who speaks English and all of that, you must understand that the system doesn't quite work, and it should be easy to grow sympathy with other people on the other slices of the wheel. So in my innocence, I went to this event, and once there, I realized that I was the only person of color. And by all means, I have white passing privilege at times. Uh, it sort of goes at times and at times not, because I have an accent here in the UK. It's Italian by all means, but it opens, the door, and then they hear my full name, which is an extension of Ysha. So it's all. So it's been interesting to understand that there is still work worth doing about the deconstruction, not only of gender, but also of the natural assumption that white is default. Does it need to be default? And if it is default, do we need to fetishize and put Orientalism on things? And so the exoticism that we fetishize, because there's a lot of, I would like to say, involuntary cultural appropriation in the witchcraft community, but I've also seen that sometimes just literally the carelessness of the being used of, no, why don't I have access to everything? So that's also been something interesting to explore and understand what can I bring to it to tell people, and teach sounds like a bad word, but do something collaborative so that people can understand, oh, I've never thought about this. And something that has been, I think, useful in that, especially since I started to speak about Palestine, is giving the people the understanding of, you might not have this perception, but I'm Arab. Hi. So any kind of prejudice you might have had before, not even in a negative way, but even the white saviorism. Yeah, no, don't. This is you want an example. This is an example. And because for some reason people think that I am well spoken at times, I think it's just because I come from a Neo-Latin language. And so when I miss a word in English, I go to Latin, and sometimes it works. But because of that, I think it helps with trying and making things more real. And again, I don't believe necessarily in teaching, but there's this natural then collaboration. I'm here. Maybe you don't know another person that is Arab and non-binary and autistic and all of this. But hey, I'm here, I'm real. And guess what? You can ask me questions. You don't have to do inference. Um, so that's for the part on autism. I will wait for Imogen, because Imogen is one of the best things that have ever happened to me joining the witchcraft community. We share more than a brain cell. Uh, and we both have this experience of autism and the way that it makes us approach our practice. And it's very soothing. Imogen actually has, I think today, when we're recording, put out a video where we were both chatting, and the simple way in which we see things the same way, because evidently our brains do get it. And it's a joy. It's nice to feel you're right. You mentioned, Amy, all of these feels like you're different. True, but then it also means that when you find one person that gets it, life makes sense.
Let's invite that one person who gets it. Hi, Imogen. Can you unmute for us? I'll start with, who are you and how are you?
Hi, Amy. That's quite the introduction. Um, Hi, yes, I am that one person. You have many people, Isha. There are so many of us. But yeah, I'm a tarot reader over on the west coast of Scotland. I go by Sapling Tarot as my kind of tarot name, YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. But my main thing is making tarot and the kind of magic, witchy goodness sort of as inclusive and accessible as possible in ways that don't feel like kind of box ticking exercises. So like just kind of we have a diversity quota and therefore we're going to make sure that, but it's just like, the world is made up of different groups of people, and I want people to feel not just represented, but or like tolerated, but kind of not to be really naff, but like loved and like kind of held in it. And yeah, um,
I want people
Isha's
to
very
feel
much part of
loved
that.
too.
Yeah, I mean that's it, isn't it? That's all we really want. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm another autistic, queer, non-binary uh, person existing in the UK, and working with Isha and getting to know Isha through this space has been an unbelievable privilege.
Tell me about how you came to tarot.
Oh, well, I have been reading tarot for the best part of like 15 years. I like Isha's wonderful partner, Raven. I was introduced uh, to, the gateway to witchcraft that is tarot, by a beloved next door neighbor who was like, she was a sociologist, she was an anthropologist, she had qualifications coming out of her ears. And then one day she asked my mum, I think, if she wanted a tarot reading, and asked if I wanted one too. And I don't know if I would be reading tarot for 14-year-olds at this point. Yes, some ethical qualms in there, I guess. But she was a lovely person. She gave me a very, very thorough tarot reading. She did a past life reading, which again, I'm like, that's some pretty heavy. That's bringing in the big guns for the teenager.
Yeah.
She did this whole thing and just kind of blew my tiny mind wide open. And so tarot was like my main thing for a long time. But then I have been, well, I'm autistic, so I've basically been disabled my whole life, but I've been more like uh visibly disabled, I suppose, for the past eight or so years. And I think, you were saying about people coming to witchcraft because they feel a bit different. I think also it can be like, not saying that people turn to witchcraft out of like desperation or whatever, but when suddenly the scales fall from your eyes and you realize that maybe the world isn't built the way you thought it was, and things like fairness and justice and all of that can kind of start to sort of fall apart a bit, because like I'm white British. I'm immensely privileged in terms of that wheel of privilege that Isha was talking about. So although like I had difficulties in ways, it wasn't in a way that made me see the cracks in the system the way that it was until I was a young adult, and suddenly those cracks became very apparent. And that was when witchcraft, and I think my autistic experience up until that point was kind of resenting the fact that I had a human body flesh suit and wanting to
Hmm.
just be like a brain navigating the
Yes.
world with no attachment to any sort of physical realm. And so the other kind of way into witchcraft was realizing that I had a body and that body had opinions about the way that I had been living my life up until that point. And so like connecting to my body and the land and the world at large, and realizing that I was a part of something so much bigger than me, and that I was not just kind of that scary capitalist cog in a machine, but that I was one little bit of a mycelial network, that we're all in it together, and that was, I suppose, my witchcraft and my politics essentially are deeply interlinked. And I think that's where me and Isha have an awful lot in common, where it's that part of the community, like you were talking about, the collaborative, the like that's my flavor of witchcraft.
Yeah, I think what witches and activists inherently have in common is that we think that we can change the world with
Yeah,
what we do and
that's
what
it.
we say
That's
and
it.
and what we think. And I really wanted to get into this. I think that a lot of people do come to witchcraft out of desperation, and I think that that's okay, when you look at the material world, and it's really not giving you anything that you want or need, then you have to look somewhere else, right? And I love this idea of including in our notions of collaboration, resolving the mind-body dilemma. And if you see your mind and body as separate, to sort of think of them as collaborators as opposed to enemies. I have chronic illness myself and mental health, physical health, and I had the same. I saw my body as the enemy, and I'm still working on that practice of like embodying my mind and seeing my corporeal nature as like part of who I am that should also be loved and tenderized.
Maybe not tenderized. Let's not do that.
Tenderized is not the word, but that I should treat with tenderness and care in the same way that I would another human. So both of you, whoever wants to jump in first, why is collaboration so important in the work of activism, in the work of witchcraft, both?
You go for it.
Um, because humans are still gregarious animals. And if I say that, and I've tried to do without humans for a very for my entire existence, the reason I escaped Italy was literally because, okay, I don't work with people. People don't like me. I can do this on my own. No, I genuinely believe that it's a taboo. It's something that hasn't left our inner needs as animals and recognition, like understanding that there's a part of you in someone else that answers to you. And you suddenly see that on one point, you share a vision of what life and what the world, a minuscule part, but you share it with someone else. It's not just you in your head. I genuinely believe every time that that happens, to me, that's the meaning of life. Oh my gosh, like we don't know each other. We come from different experiences, and yet we have both come to this understanding. There is nothing more precious to me, and it comes naturally. Like it comes on every side of life, but of course it comes with witchcraft and with activism. And I would argue that they are not two different things enough to use different words at the point, because it's all about the understanding that things are not okay or fair, or if we share a sense of right and wrong, we do understand that this is not right, and we ideally we can do something about making it right. And I was literally telling, I think this morning, I woke up my wife saying, "Oh my God, it's Missing Witches Day," which I think I also woke up Imogen the same way, like 8 in the morning with a message. "Oh my God, it's Missing Witches Day." And I woke up Raven the same way. And I was like, come on, come on, today we change the world. And realistically, what I've come to understand, I've shared content for so long, and always with the ambition of, can this be a grain of sand in the change that there will be in 100 years? And I like to say it changes the world. It needs to change, sorry, it needs to change one bit of one thought in one person. If I have done that, if I have brought one piece of information that someone can reevaluate what they thought they knew so far, I've done my bit in the world.
I think you just said that what will be the title of this episode, and maybe I will even get it as a tattoo. Today is the day
We
we
can all go
change the
together.
world. Yeah. Today is the day we change the world. But to wake up every day and to say that,
Yeah.
today is the day we change the world. I'm going to like hold that as a practice, as a morning practice. Today is the day we change the world. So tell me about Witches for Palestine. Imogen, do you want to start? It's a fundraiser, it's a collaboration. Tell me everything.
Well, it's how we change the world, obviously. The
Obviously.
so it's Isha's baby, that I am so grateful to be a part of as like a little administrative gremlin. If you get emails and stuff, you want a
Imogen
spreadsheet, that's
is
me.
not doing is not doing you're not being graceful to yourself.
Okay.
I could not
Don't
run
get
it.
the spray
The
bottle
the
out.
things that you brought is so much more than admin. Don't you dare.
Okay.
Continue and remember
Okay.
you are.
Anyway, Witches for Palestine is Isha's baby. It is, we're in the second phase right now, but the first phase was a massive raffle with some incredible prizes and a big like prize draw and stuff that was raising money for medical aid for Palestinians. And that was earlier on in the year. The current phase is a similarly incredible raffle, but now we have a slightly higher profile, and so even more people are contributing prizes. It's we've made like a little mini website so you can see contributors and things. But this time the money is going to Kutchers for Gaza, who are an incredible little grassroots mutual aid group out of Cardiff, Isha's hometown. Well, hometown. I'm, I'm saying it's your hometown now.
Current
Um,
resident's hometown. Yep.
yeah, and
Correct.
they are working with people in Cairo. They've been going to Cairo, getting Palestinian refugees resituated and getting paying for rent, paying for mattresses, paying for all sorts of like that real tangible help, which is where you really feel the difference between charity and mutual aid, is that you can see the real world impact of what you're doing. You know, there are toys for kids whose lives have been destroyed. It is tangible, immediate effect that, you know, your pounds, your dollars are going towards. And so for every £5 we convert it and, you know, round it to the nearest pound. And for every £5 you get an entry to the raffle, you can win spiritual counseling sessions, you can win courses, you can like we've got well over £1,000 worth of prizes right now. And I think as it stands, we probably have enough prizes for as many people as have bought tickets. So it is a good return on investment if you decide to contribute to this wonderful project. And you can follow Kitchens for Gaza on Instagram and see this tangible real world impact that the money is making.
Isha, can you tell our listeners precisely how they make their donation, where they send it, and so on?
So the only thing that I would add is that at the beginning we mentioned, oh, Isha also happens to be with Glitter Camry and Glitter Siblings. Glitter Siblings and Camry being the association grassroots organization for queer people of color in Wales. I basically, every time that there's stuff that can be done in content, I'm like, I can do this. Let me do this. Let me bring it to people. Uh, with the phase one, we did a Q&A with two Palestinian people so the people could learn. You have never picked a book about Palestine and you think that it's a complicated issue because it's all the media tells you. When you have 2 hours, you listen to these two people answer every question, even inflammatory questions, with a grace and receipts in a way that I've never seen before. And you learn everything that you needed to know about the last 117 years of Palestine. And in this phase, we've done an interview with Amy, which is one of the people that runs Kutches to Gaza, who's been to Cairo and all of that. And that's actually just half an hour. And they are both, they're linked on all the materials that we have, like on the Witches for Palestine page, which Imogen did from scratch. I would have known where to start with that. But yeah, there's the link to also the Q&A and the interview with Amy. And you literally see that all the things that like Imogen talked about, all the ways that the money helps. This time, it doesn't go through GoFundMe, it doesn't go through anything. The donation is literally done to the PayPal of Kutches to Gaza, which has links everywhere. Am I gonna say the URL if I don't remember how to spell it? You're gonna find the links, but it's paypal.me
Don't worry,
slash.
listeners, we're gonna put so many links in the show notes. So if and on
Thank
Instagram
goodness, because I'm
and
like,
everywhere. We're gonna
yay.
attempt the URL right now though.
Okay, paypal.me slash giasgirl1, GIASGIRL1. one. And you will see that
I
it's
see
the account of
Imogen
Amy
nodding.
Lewis.
Yeah. So I think you
Yay,
got it
I've
right.
done the
Yeah.
spelling right. You'll see that it's the PayPal of Amy Lewis, which again, one half of Coaches to Gaza. The money goes directly to her, and I think daily, like the kind of work that they do redistributing this money is insanity. And you again see on their socials the receipt for every single thing that he buys, every single request that they get, all the families that they work with, and after you've done this donation, you send proof of this donation in any way, like you forward to us the confirmation from PayPal, you send us a screenshot, whichever you like, at the email address, witchesforpalestine@gmail.com. I'm not gonna spell that because I'm not good at this. That that email gets to me and Imogen, and as soon as we get onto it, remember this is all voluntary, so it might not even happen immediately, but we will get to you, and we will reply to that email with numbers assigned to you. Those numbers are the numbers of the raffle. And in January, we will do the prize draw. The first time around, we did a live, literally, it was a number generator, random.org, and that's how the prizes are assigned. And that's, I think, how we're going to do it this time as well. And yeah, we have such a, can I swear
Yes,
on the
please do.
podcast?
Fuck yeah, you can.
We have a fuck ton of prizes, like just honestly, some of them, like the value of these, that's just wow. I'm always so grateful to see the people that have got involved, that have heard about these and have sent us prizes, because genuinely, if nothing else, the possibility that with £5 you get to do a personalized session with Kelly and Maddox, Imogen was really right. It's very good value for money. That's what you do to join in. And again, immediately, if you follow Coaches to Gaza, you see directly where your money goes every single day.
And there is, of course, a prize for missing witches as well. I want to return to Imogen. You said to feel the difference between charity and mutual aid. I think that that's huge. That is a huge idea, notion that we need to bring into, especially us, again, finger scare quotes, us white savior types, us who have that entitlement that everything that I see is for me, and everything that I do is also for me, for my ego, so that I can feel like a great. And hey, if you're making a donation to this fundraiser just to feel better about yourself, they're still gonna get the money. So like that's fine too.
We're very pro donations based on ego. That's totally fine. We
Yeah,
will
whatever
accept
reason you
those.
feel like, it's fine. Just
Whatever
get us the money.
currency, yeah, whatever warm fuzzy feeling that gives you, that's totally a-okay. But I think that the difference between charity and mutual aid, I think for a lot of, well, certainly for my like felt experience of it, is a very motivating thing to contribute to mutual aid, because it's that thing where you see that it's you are not that different from the person that is receiving the money at the end of this. And I think that, chronically ill babes, all three of us are, disabled life. There are so many different ways of seeing that we are so much closer to being the people that need that money than the people that hoard their resources at various places around the world. Like we are, it's we talk about it in the disability community. If you are not disabled, the only difference between you and me is luck and time. That is the only thing that is different, and best case scenario in life is that you become disabled, because otherwise it's just lights out, call it quits.
You haven't lived
And
long enough to become
exactly,
disabled, yeah.
exactly. These are the only things, and I think that it sounds really brutal, it sounds really bleak, but we are the same as the people who, and it's, people give shit to, like, oh, don't give a fiver to that person on the street, they'll just spend it on drugs. And it's just like, what, Derek, like you were going to this weekend, like you were
Yeah,
going to
I
put
was
that
gonna
20
spend
quid
that
up your
$5 on
nose.
drugs anyway.
Exactly. Like, what difference is there between us in terms of that roll of the die? And I think that that is a very motivating thing of give that money because one day you might be the person who needs it. And like, kind of, sure, by all means, do it because it's the right thing to do and because it makes you feel good and warm and fuzzy and all of those things, but also to acknowledge that we are all part of a system that is built on fucking us all over and that we are not so different from the people. And, you know, with the way that politics is going in various parts of the world, God forbid, God's forbid, goddesses forbid, whatever, it could happen to any one of us. And we need to be part of the systems that are in place to be able to support each other through worst case scenarios, because our worst case scenarios are happening every single day to
Yeah,
people that are not that different from us.
yeah. There's that saying that's like, today you, tomorrow me,
Exactly.
right? Like you
Exactly
say, it
that.
really is just a luck of the draw. Um, I want to sort of semi-conclude by asking you to both for some advice. I just started reading David Salaberry's witchcraft activism. Thank you, Deb. Deb is here in the with the coven for the recommendation. I just started it, but something that stuck out to me, he wrote, witchcraft is not a spectator sport. So I want to know from
Oh.
both of you, what advice do you have for people who are listening to this interview who are sitting on the bench and thinking, how do I get in the game? How do I get off the bench, out of spectator mode, and get into the game? Is it a question of bravery? Is it a question of drive? Is it a question of energy? Isha, you're shaking your head, so you've got an answer for me.
Um, it's a matter of having the spoons and wanting to do it. One of the things that I think I found most enlightening, there's a few episodes of a podcast of Renée Lodge, which is the writer of Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race. And one of the things that her and the people that got on the podcast kept highlighting was when you start to want to stand up and do stuff, you have this understanding and belief that you have to start something from scratch. No, follow. You start off by following, and there's someone that is already in it, that has already figured out all the technicalities, that needs work, that needs hands to make stuff happen that they couldn't make happen on their own, and they've already all figured it out. Therefore, try not to think of doing it because you want glory or elitism or whatever like that. Yes, at the beginning there might not be your name. That's not the point. The point is the difference that it makes. And I'm sure that in time, name will go, do stuff and things will come. But yes, there are so many groups for so many things. The reason why I got in touch with Kuchus to Gaza was literally because I was at a fundraiser and Amy spoke. And after that, I spent half an hour outside crying, saying, I don't do enough. I'll never do enough. I don't know what to do. I need to go home and sell every single item that I have to help these people. And then Raven, thankfully, my spouse, calmed me down a bit. And I was like, okay, what are the talents that we have? How do we put it to service? So I sent a message on Instagram to Amy from Kuchus to Gaza saying, hey, I'm a disabled witch. I am on welfare. I want to have the money to donate to these people. It's not something that I have. What I know how to do is content. Do you need someone to get your information out? Because the speech that you did was amazing. It taught me so much. Can we get your speech out to other people? And that's why then we recorded the interview with Amy, which is out on the Glitter Camry YouTube, and it's linked on the Witches for Palestine website. It's that kind of thing. You have a talent that can be put to use. Go to the people that are already organizing and see how that talent can be put to use. That's my best advice on that.
Because that's one of the main things about collaboration, right? Is that we all have different skill sets. You know, if you're putting on a show, you need a lighting technician, you need a performer, you need somebody who can do publicity, you need someone who can run a sound. Like all of these things combine to form one event in this metaphor or one movement. Imogen, what's your advice for people who are kind of sitting on the bench waiting for the coach to call them in?
Yeah, so like mine it kind of has two parts, and like it would be like first of all, like it's always going to be like, give yourself a little bit of grace. Don't, as much as you might need to go sit outside an event and just cry because you'll never be as whatever, but then you need the raven to come in and say, and now what do we do? And like kind of at how do we make some sort of tangible benefit? I have a real bugbear about the term of like armchair witches and stuff, and the idea that people, and I'm saying this as a disabled witch, some of us need to stay in an armchair. Not all of us can be up climbing on top of arms factories, and some of us are, if we were to be in a situation where arrests were happening, there are some of us that could put our bodies on the line, and there are others that would be at much more risk if we did that. There are so many different positions in witchcraft and activism and witchcraft as activism that are important. And I think that they are all so important. And like, if you are not sure where to start and you are waiting for that coach to, I don't do sports, I'm sorry, this metaphor could get a little bit wonky, but to blow the whistle or something and say, you're up. No one's going to come and say, you're up. You've got to decide that. And if that decision is today, I'm not going to go to Starbucks, today I'm going to go to a local coffee shop, I'm going to go and, or, I'm going to take that $3 and, make my coffee at home, and I'm going to put that $3 to a fundraiser, or, I'm going to just, instead of going into the hectic, busy Starbucks or whatever, I'm going to just sit in my car and I'm going to look out of the window at the birds or the trees, and I'm just going to let myself exist in this moment rather than contributing to systems that I know that are hurting other people. If I'm just going to simply opt out, like there are moments of, we talk a lot about how, what is it? Silence in the face of oppression is choosing the side of the oppressor and all of that. But there are ways of, even if you can't tangibly act in like kind of an active way, your passive actions, English, are still choices. And so if you can't do a thing, but you can not do a thing, if you can choose to not buy a thing, like that is contributing in a tangible way because you are not funding shitty systems. And that is, people talk a lot about, well, I can't afford to buy like more expensive clothing instead of fast fashion or something. It's just like, okay, but could you afford to not buy a thing? That is also a possibility. And I'm here. If God forbid you go and look at my YouTube tarot channel, you will see that I have an abundance of tarot decks. I'm not here saying don't ever buy things, but if you're looking for small actions to make, then yeah, someone's just said about divestment, like, move your bank, don't make the purchases. Your inaction can be as powerful as other people's direct actions.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about what you're doing, but also what you're not doing, what
Exactly.
systems you're removing yourself from.
And the choices, making those conscious decisions rather than just doing things because of the way you've always done them and because
Yeah.
they're the way that people told you to do them.
Risa and I always return to Doreen Valiente, who became kind of a famous witch, and she was invited to, this like group meeting, and she showed up, and they were like, "What do you want to do?" And she was like, "Well, I could wash the dishes." And they were like,
Exactly.
We were thinking you might be a keynote speaker." But the humility that she approached the situation with was, I'm not going to bust here in here and tell you all what you to do or how to do it, but I am offering to wash the dishes. Right? So there are
100%.
small contributions that we can make, these mundane things that become magical when we infuse
Yeah.
them with our intentions.
And the swaps, I think the swaps are so powerful of, instead of going and being in that busy place of just going and sitting and like watching the birds or whatever and seeing what benefit that brings to your life instead of you going and doing that hectic thing. And the swaps are important. You don't have to go without things necessarily, but you can swap it out.
And you can skip your Starbucks today and use that money to make a contribution to the Witches for Palestine fundraiser. And again, probably a great return on investment because there's a fuck ton or a fuck load. Which was it?
A
A metric
metric fuck
facton.
ton. A metric fuck
of
ton.
of prizes to be won. Thank you so much, Ysha. Thank you so much, Imogen. I feel like we've already gone way over what we said we were going to do, so I'll try to be respectful of your time, such as it is. So I would love to have you both back, maybe in the new year. I'm sure once this project is
Always.
done, then you'll be moving on to the next one. I can't imagine the energy that I'm getting off the two of you. This is not a one-off. You're not going into retirement once this fundraiser ends.
We thought that about, oh, we're doing phase one and it's done. And apparently Kuchis to Gaza started the same way. Oh, we're gonna raise this money, we're gonna go to Cairo, we're gonna pat ourselves on the shoulder and say that we've done that. Yeah,
I
no.
would say it is your fault for ever referring to phase one, because that does insinuate that there could be following phases. So you
I mean,
planned this, you
Yeah.
evil
I
genius.
think you might find that I think I started to say phase one in hindsight, but I'm not sure. Don't
Okay,
quote me
okay,
on
I
that.
take it back. I take it
Don't
back.
quote me on that. I might have actually you might be very right, but it was we have attempted that. We have learned. We have moved on. Like the fact that now the money goes directly to people, like the day that you are donating, that money can be in Cairo to help someone pay the rent. So that's, you know, we
And I love
learn.
this.
And once you learn, it's worth
This
putting it to use.
this notion too of if you feel like your action today, today is the day we change the world. If you feel like that
Hmm.
action is too small, then reframe it as phase one. I love
Yes,
that. And if someone
it's
comes to you
phase one
like,
of changing the world.
what have you done? Well, I made a contribution of £5. Well, that's not very much. Oh, but that's just phase one. I feel like we can
I
really
love that.
reframe our empowerment
Uh-huh.
by thinking of every action as phase one, even. Oh,
I love
there's so
that.
many coven mates in the chat thanking you for the inspiration. Much to think about and to do. That's right.
Love that.
We have to think, but we are witches. It's not a spectator sport. Which we do witchcraft. We are not witchcraft. We do witchcraft. It's doing is a verb. And so again, Witches for Palestine, Activist Witch on YouTube. Imogen, you mentioned you also have a YouTube channel. Is it Sapling Tarot?
Yeah, yeah, that's me.
So, Activist Witch, Sapling Tarot, Witches for Palestine. Please go to the show notes at missingwitches.com for this episode, and we will have all the links that you need in order to start your phase one, whatever that may
Yeah.
be.
Oh, I'm so excited for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ysha. Thank you so much, Imogen,
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
and blessed fucking be.
Yeah.
Yes.
You must be a witch.
If you want to support the Missing Witches project, join the coven. Find out how at missingwitches.com, or buy our books, New Moon Magic and Missing Witches, and check out our deck of oracles, the Missing Witches deck of oracles.